Hello, and welcome to another video. If you like this video and want to see more content just like this, don't forget to hit the subscribe button down below and hit the little bell to get notified for future uploads. This is the second video of the series for my entry into the 26th annual drawing contest by Clip Studio Paint. I have split this up into a series of videos just because I have spent a lot of time perfecting this piece for entry to the contest, and I wanted to make sure that something could be learned from my process instead of just everything whizzing by at such a high speed. So I'm hoping that, taking the time and going through each step of the process will help at least someone. If I help someone in this series, I will, I'll be happy. It'll be a good time. Let's get talking about my process and maybe explain some of the things that I do here, because it does get a little complicated. I start out always, every time I digitally color, I change the bright white background to a mid-shade gray. That helps the optic nerve not get so tired with all the blue light and all of that good stuff. So taking the steps and allowing your eyes to just do the best they can do in the amount of time you're given each day, it helps. So, if you're having issues picking colors and you feel like your colors are not cohesive, give your eyes a break, and next time you start, try putting it on a gray background instead. One really nice thing that I like about Clip Studio Paint, and I'm sure it is available in other programs as well, is the ability to kind of pre-pick your color palette, and you can see that there on the screen, and I will kind of highlight it so that you can see it better. But basically I went and I knew I wanted it to be a blue gold kind of happy Serenity type feel, and there can be a lot that can be portrayed through the color choices of your image. So I had already picked and found colors that I really liked that went well together, and put them on a color palette, so then they were easy to pick and I could just come back to them and pick them when needed. So I'm starting to overlap that gray kind of skin tone that I started with more brighter, livelier skin tones. And I start with a gray tone for the same reason I start with the gray mid-tone background. It's because I don't want my eyes to get used to one tone, and I just feel like starting with a grayish tone in the background, it one helps you pick your colors better, and two, it makes your eyes not hurt as much, which for me is one of my big priorities because my eyeballs are so sensitive all the time. So starting out, and I'm just blocking in large blocks of color and really focusing on the shape instead of the individual, like lines essentially. It's important when you're starting to block in and creating form to really look at the shape instead of just particular lines. The lines come with a fine detail after, and I think that's something that newer artists really struggle with. They want perfect lines and all of that stuff, and painting, even traditional painting, it's really particular. You really have to get the shapes correct. If they don't look correct, nothing is going to look right. You're never going to be happy with your line work. It's just not going to be a happy day. So my number one big tip, and I've said it in a previous video, focus on your shapes, and the big shapes. Start with big shapes with a big brush and go smaller as you get into more detail. You're really not gonna need to get into the really tiny brushes except for really tiny details, like things around the eyes and maybe around the nose and that kind of stuff. For large body parts like arms and all of that stuff, you're really not going to need the smaller brush sizes. Stick with 80 pixels or larger, I'd say, for for most shapes, unless you're doing really small, fine detail, and that honestly should not come until later. I really struggle with form even after tons of practice, and it was my main focus as I went to school for my art degree. It's form is very important in it. It's, you can't fill the cup until the cup is made, and making that cup is the hardest part of the process. So finding how all of the shadows and highlights come and reflect off of the object that you're creating is going to make a more lively and interesting subject, instead of forcing it with just lines, essentially. So that to me is why I prefer focusing on the shapes, even of individual areas. It's about the shape. And once you get shapes down and you can see how they work together, then you can start blending and getting those really nice fine details. Because without knowing how the shape fills a space, you can't properly reflect light from it, you can't properly depict the shadows, and you can't depict form without knowing the shape. So while lines can help show the definition of a shape, that's what lines do, form in blocks of shapes will further help depict. The line work is just one segment to this pizza. Okay, if we're talking about a pizza, we're making a pizza, the line work is the crust. Okay, that's what you start with, and the shapes, that's the sauce. And all these, the blending, getting all the shapes to flow into each other, that's the cheese, right? That's the tasty part. That's what everyone wants, right? Is the cheese. And all the fine details, those are the toppings, okay? So I don't know where I got the pizza the pizza metaphor from, but it works. It really works in describing the shape versus line. It's not one or the other. They work in unison, and some people focus on one thing too much, and it ends up blowing everything out, and you end up getting frustrated. And no one likes being frustrated. So working on the whole pizza, getting the whole pizza right, it's building up. So work on getting lines right, okay? That's the first step, working on your lines. Then work on the shapes within the line, the big shapes. I'm talking like, this is a big shadow shape, and this is, kind of where the light hits, and maybe, then you can focus, okay, well, there's like a slight indent, so there's going to be shadow here, and then just furthering those shapes, because there's going to be shapes upon shapes upon shapes. Getting those shapes down is going to make your line work come to life. And if all you want to do is line work, completely ignore everything I said. And if you have a better approach, completely ignore what I said. This is how my mom taught me. My mom taught me how to paint, and she taught me how to draw, and she forced me to spend an hour every day drawing and focusing on shapes rather than lines. So when I would draw a figure out of my older brother's 3.5 edition monster manual, she'd have me draw the shapes within the figure before the line work. And it really helped. Like, I really do think that foundation helped me understand shape more. Even with lines, I love a good line art, and I do focus on lines a lot. I think a lot can be said with just lines. Contours are one of my favorite forms of art, and I have several. They're not hanging because I don't have any of my artwork hanging around my house. It's kind of one of those weird things that you never get past, but it's just one piece of the pizza. And if you want to create a whole pizza, you gotta focus on more than the crust. So So I make a lot of changes. I try not to think as my line art, even though I worked really hard on getting my line art perfect before I start coloring. It is not final, and it's really important to think that everything is malleable, even, you know, as you're painting and everything like that. So you'll see that I make so many changes throughout the video to my line art, to the form, to the face. Working and expanding on things as you work on it is an important part of the creative process. And I struggled on a lot of aspects with this drawing, mostly because I wanted it to be perfect, and I get it, I'm weird, and I am one of those really like die-hard super perfectionists, and it irritates a lot of people, and I'm sorry if it irritates you. But one of the parts that I struggled with was the eyes. I struggled in sketching the eye. I struggled on the finalization of the eye. I'm still really not quite happy with the eye, even after I create the YouTube videos for it. So there are aspects that you're always going to struggle with, and I think looking past those struggles and learning from them and just trying to make it the best thing you can be is really important. I normally create fairly realistic illustrations of humans, and that's what I've always done, and that's what, when my mom taught me how to draw, that's what she wanted me to do, and that's fine. Focusing on realistic proportions is really important. And it is the first step of being able to create your own styles and, becoming that, really cool illustrator that you want to be or whatnot. You have to know the proportions well in order to distort them. So this is kind of one of my first ventures into these really distorted proportions. I know her nose isn't perfect. I didn't want it to be perfect. One of the big things when I went into this drawing is I wanted to illustrate that someone can be pretty and attractive and have not the best features. So having this really out of place nose was actually something that I really strived for. And it sounds like a strange thing, but after working on getting perfect proportions my whole life, finally having like this opportunity to just let myself go, it was kind of liberating. And to teaching and showing people that perfect proportions doesn't mean much if that's the only thing a person has. So, if you have a really unique nose, cherish that nose, man. I think uniqueness in individuals is important, and everyone has unique features for a reason. No one has to have super amazing features to be pretty or attractive. So if you have that odd-shaped nose, or maybe your mouth isn't as full as you want it to be, learn to live with your body. It's so important, and it's something I struggle with. I'm not gonna lie. I have some self-confidence issues that, everyone else has. But it's, one of those things where eventually you gotta realize that you can't change the body you're born into, and you have to play the hand you're dealt. And if that means your nose is just a little too big, own it. Own that big nose. Own your non-pear-shaped body. It's okay, you got this. The world will still turn. You're still you. And be the best you can be. So, I had merged, and this is the first time I've ever merged my line art because I'm so weird about my line art getting merged. But I actually colorized my line art with, I think, Multiply. I might have actually used the correction layer in Clip Studio Paint to physically change the color of the line art, actually. I think that's what I did, but I'm not entirely sure. But I changed the color of the line art, and I merged it with my skin painting. And I think that was an important hurdle for me to jump over for a variety of reasons. It made me not rely on my line art so hard, first off, which is really important. And it also let me merge my line art into my drawing and make my drawing a little bit more cohesive. It's one of those things, a lot of people just like really strong line art in their work, and if you do, that's completely fine. I am not judging you. I like strong line art, and I'm not gonna lie about that. I wanted to create an image where the line art wasn't so prevalent, and merging that it took me a while, and I thought on it, and I just said, screw it, I'm doing it, and this is how this painting is gonna be. And even if I don't like it, I'm going to submit this painting, line art or no line art. So there we go. I merged the line art, made it one with the painting, and made it as malleable as everything else. And that was a really important step. I honestly feel like this painting is one of the best ones I've done. It has a lot of personality. It's not perfect, but nothing is perfect. And there are a lot of flaws, and I'm okay with flaws. Noticing those flaws and learning how to conquer them is how you get better and become, you know, like the best person you can be, which I think is super important. So later on, I do change like the nose, the bottom of the nose, and how the light hits it, because I realized that it was like completely not how it was supposed to be. It's like I was taking like a straight on nose and putting it sideways, and it didn't work. So, but one thing that is important about skin is get your base really strong with non-vibrant, unsaturated tones. Work in those shapes, blend them out, make them smooth, make them flow well. And then take those same tones and use multiply and overlay and color dodge and watch those tones pop. Now I did add some things to her face, like that, you know, nice yellow color from her eyeshadow and this really nice kind of rosy beige color to her cheeks, which added a little bit of life. Obviously, there are parts where it needs to be saturated red. Her cheeks and the ball part of the nose is especially important to emphasize that the person is actually alive and not some undead creature. So, taking little hints and emphasizing where blood flow is really important. Cheeks is obviously one of those places where blood flow is. That's why women put blush on their cheeks, is because it's cute and it, you know, shows people that they're alive. When you blush, it's, you know, cute, and blushing is just the sudden flow to your veins on your cheeks there. So it's important to emphasize those parts. But it's also really important to use desaturated tones. Okay, if all you have are saturated tones, it is going to be gaudy, and I'm saying that from experience. It's not fun. it's really not fun. You're gonna get frustrated because it doesn't look right. You can't get it to look right, and it's just one of those things where, you know. So start with your desaturated tones and build on it really like you're painting, like an actual painting. Use your desaturated dark tones and build on it lightly. There's a reason why oil painters are, you know, you should start off with oil painting and build up on that, because I was taught oil by starting dark and going lighter, because it showed you how the tones build upon each other and how eventually the little bit of light that's there, like the actual like super bright light, isn't actually white, and using super bright white is not, it doesn't look as good as everyone thinks. So I sometimes, when I'm making super illustrated stuff, I use bright white, and it makes it look super glossy. But most of the time you do not want super bright white. You're gonna be somewhere just below bright white in the gray area, or even in the white, so, or in the colored area, not so saturated, or not so unsaturated, I should say. So I think it's important to keep that in mind. So I just wanted to touch base with the freckles really quick, because I know a lot of people are going to have questions about it. I will link the brushes that I use down in the description, so then those are available, because it is a free set or whatnot. I basically used the splatter brush in that set, and I just set it to I used the brown tone on the shoulder, and I set it to multiply, and I think it worked out really nicely for the freckles. I don't really do freckles a lot. Freckles can add a lot to a piece, and it kind of shows that, you know, that the skin isn't perfect, and I think that's also important. Creating like picture perfect images and drawings are just not so, I don't know, not so great. There has to be some kind of flaw within it, and I think it makes it interesting. Thank you for watching the video, and I hope to see you next time. And I hope everyone has a great day.